Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It was on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918 during World War I when the armistice with Germany went into effect, and for a while was called Armistice Day. In 1954, it was changed to its current iteration of Veterans Day, and that today is what we celebrate here at West Prairie High School. We welcome you to our Veterans Day ceremony, both those of you that are in the crowd and those of you that are with us online. We want to say thank you to all the sacrifices that our veterans have given to us, both men and women, both those still serving and those who are no longer with us. It is at this time we would like to present the ceremony entitled the Table of the Missing Man. The Missing Man table symbolizes those soldiers that are prisoners of war or are missing in action. Today, the West Prairie Junior Senior High School sets the table for those we love. In the middle of the gym, we find the table that is set for one. Our table is round to symbolize the everlasting concern of those who love this service member. There is a white tablecloth to symbolize the pure intentions of the individuals who answered the nation's call to arms. The head cover is on the table to represent the armed service of the individual who is missing. The single rose in the vase symbolizes the blood that the service member shed in defense of the freedom of the United States of America. This rose also represents the family and friends who kept the faith while they waited for their loved ones to come home and kept that light on in the window. The red ribbon represents the love of the country that filled the missing's heart and inspired them to make the ultimate sacrifice for the United States of America. The slice of lemon on the bread table represents the bitterness of the fate of the missing. Salt sprinkled on the bread plate symbolizes the tears that were shed by the waiting families. The inverted glass represents the fact that those who are missing may never drink again. A lit candle symbolizes the hope that lives in the hearts of the families waiting for their loved ones. The candle also illuminates the path leading to the missing soldier's home. The empty chair is to represent the absence of those who are fallen or are missing. Our soldiers risk everything to defend freedom in our nation. This table set for one symbolizes the lingering fact that some may never make that journey home. We must do everything in our power to remember those people. Today we set this table to honor those important people that we call soldiers, defenders, grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, friend, or family. May we never forget them. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce from the Macomb VFW, Dale Manser, who would like to speak to those assembled today.
I don't think any of you know me. I'm so glad that you guys are doing this ceremony, recognizing the veterans. And when you leave here today, you will get a poppy. Those poppies are very significant. And wear it proudly, because if you don't wear it, you aren't honoring veterans. The poppy began in 1922 as to raise money for those veterans and their families. Today, this poppy program is still very, very active, and the money is distributed between federal, state, and local. And it is there for all veterans and their family and their children. So when you honor a veteran wearing this poppy, you honor those that have passed away. And there is a poem behind the poppies, and I'm not going to read you the whole poem, which I'm sure I would have had you memorize if you were in my class, but this poem was in Flanders Field. And the very last part of the poem says, "The truth be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field." So wear your poppy proudly today in honor of veterans. Thank you.
Today, we would like to welcome a very special guest on this Veterans Day. This individual had served in the U.S. Army from 1966 to 1999. During his more than 30 years in the service, he gained incredible experiences and skills that helped him become the person he is today. He believes that the Army has the greatest people, education, and training tools in the world. Today, he lives in Macomb, Illinois. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Mr. Clay Hinderleiter.
Thank you. At 33 years he talked about serving. I served 8 years on active duty and 25 years in the Guard and Reserve. I'm originally from Canton, Illinois. I enlisted in 1966 when there was this thing called the Vietnam War going on. And graduated from high school, went to work at Caterpillar, worked there about 4 months and said, there's got to be something else to life besides this. So I went out and joined the Army in the middle of a war. Smartest thing I ever did. I was an 18-year-old sergeant, 19-year-old lieutenant, 21-year-old captain in the middle of a war. I flew helicopters in Vietnam, and people ask me about that experience, and I simply say, most significant event in my life. I wouldn't trade that time for anything in the world. I wouldn't wish it on anybody else. But since I've retired in 1999, I will tell you now, point blank, we should have never been there in the first place. A couple rules about war. Wars are fought by the poor, the brave, and the young. And the other rule is if you don't win, you lose. All right? And the third one is people die, and there's nothing you can do to make that not happen. Those are the rules of war. You talk to veterans about current political situation, and they're aghast. For me, I think I would like to see the draft reinstated. I think serving your country for 2 years is not too big a price to ask. Unfortunately, we're not threatened like Israel is, and like every one of their male and female young people serve. They serve 2 years. But there's a lot of mothers out there that says, not my son, not my daughter. My mother said that. And my question to her was, if not me, who? If not now, when? I had an opportunity in 1991. There was a thing called Desert Storm that popped up. And I was a battalion commander in the Illinois National Guard of an Aviation Battalion. And they were not going to take my battalion because my battalion, a third of it was into another state, and they were not ready to go. But they would take volunteers. So I went to my wife, and I said, what do you think? And she said, if you want to do this, it's okay with me. It's all right. I had 400 people volunteer in my battalion to go to Desert Storm and Desert Shield as individuals, not in a unit. I met with all those people, got them all in a group. They had to sign a single-page form, and I had to approve every one of those. So I got them all together and said, I got 2 questions I'm going to ask you collectively. You're going to have to answer individually before I sign your paperwork. Question number 1, why do you want to do this? Question number 2, what's your significant other think about this? One of my pilot's hands went up in the back, and I acknowledged him. He said, sir, you ask us those questions. We need to ask you those questions because your name's on this list too. I said, okay. I got one more good fight left in me. This time I got a chance of being on a winning team. And this guy, Saddam Hussein, needs his butt kicked. Out of those 400, they took 4. And they never left country. What happened in Desert Storm, that 100-hour war, was not a war. It was just a battle. And we finished that battle 10 years later. A couple other stories I got for you for veterans, personal stories. We fly on a mission one day in Vietnam. I had a very tall, slender, quiet, competent gunner from the Midwest. And he was a team player, and he's always trying to do whatever he could to make the team better. Been with us about 3 or 4 months. We pulled into the revetment, and just as we shut down, the blade stopped turning. MP Jeep comes around on our flight line, comes right up to my helicopter. MP Sergeant gets out, walks up to my young man, Smitty, we'll call him, and said, are you Specialist Smith? Yes. You're under arrest. And I came around from the other side of the aircraft and walked up to the MP Sergeant and said, what's going on, Sarge? He said, sir, you need to stay out of this. And I said, Sarge, you don't understand. This young man's mine. He saved my bacon a couple of times. Whatever's going to happen to him, I'm going to know about it. Well, sir, he's underage. What? How old is he? 15. And you look at Smitty, and his head went down. And he nodded. I said 15. And he'd been with us for 3 or 4 months. He'd been through basic, he'd been through AIT, and he come to Vietnam. So he's got about a year in the Army right now, which means he joined at 14. So the MP Sergeant said, turn around, I'm going to cuff him. I said, whoa, you're not going to cuff him. And once again, we were going nose to nose and toes to toes. You're not cuffing him. He's not a criminal. Might not be very bright, but he's not a criminal. So we went to the MP station, and I talked to the MP desk sergeant. I said, what's going on here? He said, sir, he's going to be on a Freedom Bird tomorrow. I'm going to go home. He will not spend a minute in a cell. We will not put him in cuffs. He said, I guarantee you that. I said, thank you. Appreciate that very much. And on the way out, stop, look at him, hug him, shake his hand. They said, come back and see us when you're 17. Now we're going to go to the other side of that sword. I come back from Vietnam on leave in March of 1970. It snowed the first 12 inches the first 4 days I was home. I was ready to go back to Vietnam. It's cold and miserable here. I drove over to Chanute Air Force Base in Rantoul, get some money, casual pay while I was on leave. I'm driving back in the middle of a blizzard, just outside of Rantoul. Stood a guy there, had a sign that says Western Illinois University. And he had a bag of some sort. And I stopped and picked him up. And he got in my car, sat in the passenger seat. And he was cold and trying to warm up. And I was in civilian clothes. And so he starts talking. And obviously he likes the sound of his own voice. And he begins to tell me that he was a participant in 1969 at the riot on WIU campus where they tried to break into the ROTC to get the guns. And I'm looking at him thinking, what? And thinking, what are you going to do with those guns? And he's talking on and on about how much fun he's having in college, etc. I opened up the console between our seats to get a pack of cigarettes because I smoked in those days, and my military hat was in there with my captain's bars on it. And he said, "You in the military?" "Yep." "Where are you stationed?" "Vietnam, home. I'm home on leave, going back." Never said another word to me, all the way to Macomb. So you got these two polar opposites here, a 14-year-old and somebody in college hiding from the draft. Note, highest population WIU ever had was during the Vietnam War. Student population 17,000, hiding from the war. If not me, who? A lot of people don't understand the draft is still out there, just not activated right now. And they're also doing some language now that will include girls. And let's talk about veterans who serve in combat. Not every soldier, not every sailor, not every airman is a combatant. For every combatant, there are 10 people who do not serve in combat. Support troops, essential to the operation. Logisticians, doctors, medical staff, clerks, admin folks. So some people say, "Oh, that's not for me. I'm not built to do that." You can do something that has value to this nation. Movie out here not too long ago, Hacksaw Ridge, about a medic by the name of Desmond Doss, conscientious objector, never carried a gun in his life. Medal of Honor winner, saved 75 people in the Pacific. I had a classmate when I was going through flight school who was a conscientious objector. And they asked me, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fly medevacs." That works for him. Worked for me too. Sometimes we all, at times, suffer from what I call the human condition. And here it is. Rules don't apply to me. At least they shouldn't apply to me because I'm special. I'm special because, fill in the blank. If you're a citizen of this nation and you get the opportunities that this nation affords, I think you owe something. Because I'll tell you right now, there's a bunch of people who live in other countries who will trade places with you in a second. They'd love to have what you have, what we have, individually and as a nation. So, oftentimes somebody will say to me, "Thank you for the service." And if they look me in the eyes, I know they mean it. If they don't look me in the eyes, they're just saying it because it's the cool thing to do. Or it's the accepted thing to do. Now, let's come out of that realm. Let's go into what you learn here in your communities and your schools. Number one, learn your history. Because if you don't learn history, you're going to make the same mistakes. Part and parcel of my job in the military was I was a safety officer. About halfway through my career, I went through aviation safety course and figured out that we could move that into the operational arena because when I got a pilot out of flight school, he didn't know anything. As opposed to the guy who's got one year of time with his wings and he's got 1,000 hours flight time. They are not comparable. I can't afford to lose that 1,000-hour pilot. And on accidents, and young people have accidents all the time, we haven't come up with any new or innovative ways to get people hurt or killed. We do the same thing time after time because rules don't apply to me. Rules don't apply to me. Also become aware of what's going on in current events. I told you Vietnam was the most significant event in my life, but we should have never been there. My son, who has 30 years in right now, has 4 combat tours. Last one was in Afghanistan. And I'm here to tell you, we were there 20 years. We should have been out after about 19. I was thrilled when we came out of there, or decided we were going to come out of there. I was not thrilled about how we left. Whoever was in charge of that operation should have been fired. Understand, our government, your government, at levels, doesn't always tell you the truth. I was shocked when I was a young man and Jody Powell, who was the press secretary for Jimmy Carter, when Carter was president, said, we're not obligated to tell you the truth. And I thought, really? And my response is, don't tell me any lies. You don't have to tell me the whole story, but don't tell me any lies. We'll figure the rest of it out. So, do your history, be aware of current events, and step up to the plate, please. Thank you.
And I think it's worthwhile, stand up, ladies and gentlemen, and thank Mr. Hinderleiter again, please. We want to thank everybody for coming today. That does conclude our Veterans Day service here today. And we'd like you to take those lessons that you've learned today and take them out with you today. At this time, we would like to release all the high school drivers. So if you have driven here to high school today, you may leave.